Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like and share. It really helped the channel. Never did I wish to disclose my story, but it must be done. Since so much time has passed, nobody knows. However, I now entrust you, the reader, with the task of reading my account and attempting to comprehend the atrocities I endured. As I type this, my fingers tremble and quiver, and tears stream down my face. However, I must tell you that what you are reading cannot be undone. It was a typical evening in my apartment. I was exhausted, my recent office days had been so hectic, and I looked forward to the peaceful release of sleep. It always seemed to improve the situation. However, this night was unique. The wind appeared menacing. The sky seemed darker. As I watched my favorite sitcoms before going to bed, I noticed what appeared to be an odd shadow standing outside my window. I concentrated my full vision on what I believed to be present. Nothing. Just darkness. I believed I was simply overtired. Just a bit too much work today, nothing more. I finished my television program and then went to bed. As I attempted to fall asleep, I heard the door at the end of my room squeak. I disregarded it since I was too exhausted to get riled up over nothing. I then had the impression I was being watched. I attempted to shake it off, all I wanted to do was sleep. Finally, I heard something heavy, slow breathing. I initially believed it was me and that I was psyching myself out, so I briefly held my breath. It was not I. I was jerked out of bed and opened my eyes. I froze when I saw a 6-year-old girl with long black hair and a white nightgown standing at the foot of my bed. She regarded me with unwavering gaze and a broad smile. She had serious slashes on her face, and her side-hanging hands were also covered in blood. We sat and stood staring at each other for a considerable amount of time before she let out a horrific, inhuman scream. At that moment, I attempted to dash for the door, but she pounced on me, pressing her claws into my face, her dark, black eyes inches from mine, wailing the entire while. As the screams got deafening, I quickly lost my equilibrium and smacked my head against the table next to my bed. I lost consciousness. I looked to have awakened in an empty basement. The only item of clothing that remained on was my shirt. I tried to maintain equilibrium. My scalp was coated with dried blood. I inspected my arms. There were slashes all along them, forming letters. I discovered the phrase "Will you play with me?" Also, it was written on both of my sides. I looked around the room in terror and discovered a blood-soaked iron door. I made my way there gently. Although there was no evidence of the girl, I suspected she may be hiding behind the door. Despite my anxiety, I had to enter. I had to. What I observed was terrible. Victims were strewn across the room from one corner to the opposite stairs. Men, women, and children were all lying still. Similar to mine, cuts on their arms and legs read "Will you play with me?" Except that these victims had something I lacked. I gazed in terror at a neighboring woman. As I drew closer, I saw a giant toy fire truck wedged in with her innards as she lay on her back with her abdomen torn open. I choked up vomit and retreated. 2 metal jacks were embedded in the eyeballs of a man who was lying against the wall. His skull had caved in, and next to him was a baseball bat that had been broken in two and was lying in a pool of blood. A tiny youngster lay unresponsive in the center. His mouth was wide open and the beginning of a toy car track was protruding out of it. It had been forced down his throat. His chest was slashed open, and his heart was found lying close to his body. Instead of a heart, he had the disassembled parts of a doll. I lost control and threw up. I cried briefly, but then a notion occurred to me. Where is the female? Obviously, I did not consider this when I wanted to know where she was. I considered it briefly before spotting the stairwell in the corner of the room. I started strolling in its direction but then paused. Something was breathing heavily behind me. While I was investigating the remains, the girl waited patiently in the corner. When I looked around, she was there. She then stated, in a voice that terrified my ears with its pitch, "Would you like to play?" She started screaming. I turned to flee, but she was already on me. My back and neck were pierced by needle-sharp nails. I fought with her until I eventually threw her to the ground. I dashed for the door, but it slammed shut as I approached. I pounded on it and muttered profanities as blood ran down my back. It refused to open. She was again on me. I elbowed her in the face, and she dug her claws into my back. I was able to dislodge her and turn around. As she lunged, I was able to catch her. Her large, black eyes were inches from mine, and her nails dug into my face. Her screams are deafening to me. She raised one hand, grinning from ear to ear, and placed it on my eyes. Everything became pitch black. I awoke in a hospital with bandages covering my entire body, including both eyes. A police officer was present in my room conversing with a physician. When they noticed I was awake, they smiled. They informed me that I was the sole survivor of a mass murder and that a middle-aged guy had been apprehended. I informed them of the girl. They reported that no female was discovered at the crime scene. I was not believed by them. They advised that I should rest. 2 weeks passed, and I was given permission to depart. I passed the waiting room as I left the hospital with lasting scars on my arms, face, back, and sides. There were some toys on the ground. Jacks, a toy fire engine, a doll, and a toy car track. A young woman with long black hair was seated with these toys. She was dressed in a white gown. She gazed up at me with a broad smile and spoke with a voice that pierced every wound on my body. "Would you like to play?"